Hi, my name's Keith Cooper, Northlight Images, and in a recent video I looked at doing some canvas prints on this ET8500, which is quite a small printer, and here is one of the canvas prints I produced from it. I've had quite a lot of questions about canvas. I looked at mounting some large prints recently as well, and I thought I don't use canvas very often, but I do sometimes provide prints professionally to clients on canvas. Now, as I showed in the other video, if they're large prints, I will get a professional canvas framer, someone who makes artist canvases, who can stretch them, put them on a stretcher and prepare them properly, and I will use those, and that's a great way of doing it. But you can do it yourself, but this was specifically about the durability of canvas. Now, this particular canvas here is a matte artist canvas. It's an old HP branded one that I've got lots of sheets of, so I use it for testing. It's not necessarily one I'd use myself if I was printing canvas work, because it's a matte finish. That does mean that the surface, although it's quite robust, is perhaps a little sensitive to scratching, and in mounting might show some issues. But you can fold these canvases quite well, and they are slightly stretchable as well, and they don't show cracking. So there are lots of canvases like this, but do make sure you get one that is meant for use with inkjet printers. Ordinary artist canvas does not have the surface coatings to take inks. It's also a bit tricky profiling canvas. Sometimes you need to actually create custom ICC profiles, and I have done for this and some other canvases, which I'll show some examples of in a moment. But there we go, that is the matte canvas. What about coating it? Well, the classic coating is to varnish canvases. What are the sort of strengths and weaknesses of varnishing a canvas like this? And if you varnish a canvas like this, you'll get a glossy canvas like this. Now, I'll come back to this one in a bit, but this one, all it needs is a coat of varnish. I say all it needs is a coat of varnish. The advantages are, once you varnish it, durability. It's much tougher, certainly if it's going into a domestic environment. The print becomes a lot more resistant to dust, it's easier to clean, everything, for if you're showing the canvas where people can touch it. Certainly I wouldn't want to use a matte canvas like this somewhere where people might touch it, or it would be exposed to damp or anything like that. So we've got a coating for that. It also improves the surface sheen. You can get glossy varnishes, you can get sort of slightly dull semi-gloss finishes for canvases as well for the varnishes. There are lots of varnishes available. Why don't I like varnishing canvases? Well, the most immediate thing is it changes the colour. It changes the rendition of colours in your image, which means that if you've gone to the trouble of making an ICC profile, the moment you put varnish on the top, it can change the relative intensity of colours, and that will depend on the colour, it will depend on the inks, all kinds of things. So you've got an element of unpredictability. Now, that may not be a problem, but if it is, colour accuracy is important for you, and some tones do show drifting in colour more than others, particularly skies and things like that. If that sky goes a little bit too warm or a little bit too cool because of some interaction between the coating and the inks and the canvas, then you're going to have to reprofile, and it may not be an easy thing to do, because once you've varnished it, actually putting the test sheets through a scanning spectrophotometer is tricky. Means that you have to do it by hand, and it all gets a little bit complicated. The actual coating process itself can be awkward on larger canvases. There are all sorts of ways of doing it, and if you hunt around on YouTube, you will find loads of examples of people showing you how to varnish prints and things. Whether it's brushing, spraying, using a rod, sweeping across, pouring across, how to coat prints and things like that. There are lots of different ways of doing it, but they've all got one thing in common: there are a lot of faffing about, and it depends on what the varnish is or the coating is, but you're also dealing with chemicals, some of which may not be that good for you. If you use them in a non-well ventilated space, you may need a face mask, all kinds of protective equipment. you've got to think of the expense of doing it. Also the effort and time it takes to do it. And there's one last problem with coating anything like this, and that's dust. So you ideally need to do it somewhere where dust isn't going to settle out. Certainly a room like this would be hopeless for it, ventilation point of view, and dust. There's a carpet that's been here for ages and stuff, and these books, they're dust magnets, so no way will I want to do stuff here. I know how much dust is in this room from when I do precision macro photography, and I try not to disturb anything before doing it because dust will settle out. More so on very glossy finishes, but it can, a few specks, and once it's there you can't pick it off or anything like that because it will show up all the more. It's a problem with it. So the pros for it are definitely in robustness and the look, but there are all kinds of practical difficulties which you may consider you don't really want to get into. But as I said, I mentioned these other prints as well. Now that's on a matte. What about this one here? Well, this one, still taut, it is on a wooden stretcher. Now I had this done for me as a test. It is printed on an Innova Glossy canvas. Now the actual picture is some chilies. It's a detail from this picture, which was taken with an 11 megapixel Canon 1DS years ago at the market in Seattle. I just got the picture with the backlight on these, took this and printed it off. Now this was printed using, if I remember rightly, an Epson 4800 or maybe a 4880. So it is pigment ink, but it has not been coated. What's more, this is one of my long-term test pieces, and I can see this by looking at the top edge of it here, which is decidedly mucky. This has been in our kitchen for, I'm going to say, at least 12, maybe as many as 15 years, at least 12 years. This has been in a kitchen that's in daily use for cooking, and it's absolutely fine. It's been wiped down with a damp cloth occasionally. It looks great. I can see the bit where it hasn't been wiped down because the top here where dust has collected. Now this is a kitchen with cooking going on it. Okay, I've got an extractor, but stuff in kitchens catch. There are no problems with the ink adhesion and the surface adhesion. If I look carefully, there is no cracking. What has happened is that the brown tape that was put on the back to cover where it's stapled has come off a bit. That's probably the steam. It's okay. It hasn't needed restretching. It's a proper stretch canvas, so it has wedges in the corner that you could use. You could knock in to retension it if need be. Has a metal strap on here, and that has hung in the kitchen, as I say, 12, 15 years. No problems with it whatsoever. That's using an Innova, if I remember rightly, it was IFA 36. I can't remember the numbers precisely, but it's an Innova glossy canvas. There are other glossy canvases about, but this is one I used. This particular canvas was used for making this big print here. Now that's me pointing out some details on the print to somebody when it was shown at an exhibition. The canvas itself, it had a long nail, wooden strip nailed into the wall along the top, and then the canvas was stapled onto it. Now this was before we evened out some of the slight dents and things in it. It was never fully stretched, it's just too big. This is 47 feet long. This is printed on 44-inch canvas. I put a link to the making of article that I've got that goes into how this particular image is made. This is the largest ever print produced of the city centre of Leicester. Say 47 feet long. It has detail in it in that the original image, you can look, there's a bank here, and if you look and zoom into the original details, you can read text on the cash point machine that is there in a doorway there. It was taken over 3 nights, I say, but if you're interested in that, I've got a special article that I wrote that covers all the details of making it long before I made videos, so you'll just have to read the article. It's got lots of these pictures in it. So that's using the glossy canvas. if that was stretched, now I've still not found a home for this one. This was a few years ago. It's been offered to Leicester, the city where I live. I know the city mayor would love to be able to show it, but they haven't got a wall big enough to put it on. So the offer is still standing for somewhere in the city of Leicester to show this particular image. It is at the moment rolled up, carefully rolled up with tissue paper in a plastic tube, in a box, in a cupboard, just off over here. That was fun. It took about 2.5 hours to print, if I remember rightly. It was printed on a Canon IPF 8300, so that's pigment ink as well. So these are Epson pigment inks. This was Canon, but yeah, makes not much of a difference. Pigment inks are a definite for this sort of stuff if you want it to last. Or you could use dye inks and you could varnish it. They might, I suppose, fade in light and things like that. But there you go. That is how I would approach dealing with canvas prints. Now, if you want to do small ones like this, now this one is has got a gallery wrap edging to it. This one would fit on quite a small stretcher, sort of thing you could do yourself. I'm not sure I would really want to have that many prints, the canvas prints this size. I much prefer just paper prints for this, but for large stuff like this, glossy canvas works a treat. So I hope that's of interest and of some use. Let me know if you've got any specific questions. It is people's questions that sort of give me ideas for these little short videos about stuff that I've done. And say, if you know anyone who can find a home for this picture, I would obviously appreciate that. Free to a good home. So there you go. Thanks for watching, and please do subscribe to the channel.